Talking Tesla.
I'm not sure if like my foot should be on the brake or the accelerator.
They put rings on Elon.
It must be some sort of geometrical algorithm.
I don't think you need to touch the steering wheel there, Tom.
Oh, I'm sure there's some math. So SpaceX, here's the deal. Landing a rocket on a drone ship is key. Charger.
How am I expected to drive a car without autopilot? Safely.
Charger. You know, I'm not a good parker, Tom.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit it. I just think that this is a car company that is run by super geeks. All the other cars are going to be stupid cars compared to this car. Tesla.
You don't even have to remember that. You've got a Model X. I have seen the future, and it is light pole charging.
No, I wouldn't call it a screw up. Do you like your Model X?
God, it's beautiful. All right, people of the Talking Tesla universe, it's time. It's time for 192. Pandemic still going, but it is time for us to talk about fourth quarter 2020 earnings, which just dropped just today. You're probably getting this the next day, but there's things to discuss. But before we get to the money, may I lead off? And I'll tell you why I need to lead off, because it is 7:15 at night here on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. My bedtime is 6:30. So this is 45 minutes past my bedtime. I'm not going to get to the end of the show because I can tell you these idiots are going to talk for like 3 hours.
No,
and I'm just going to be checking out.
Don't talk about Joel and Robert like that.
He was talking about you.
Let me tell you the most disturbing thing that happened during the fourth quarter earnings
Mel,
call.
would you please tell us about the most disturbing thing that happened on the fourth quarter earnings call?
Thank you for asking, Robert. So nice of you.
I thought you were going to talk about the most disturbing thing that happened since we last met.
No, there's too many things to go through there.
Okay.
What's up with the steering wheel in the S and the X? That's going to piss off a lot of people. I told my wife, here's the new X, and she looked at the steering wheel and she's like, I don't want that. And I think that's going to be the answer to lots of people, because she hangs her hands off the top of the steering wheel when she's on autopilot, and just the jiggling means that she doesn't have to do anything. You can't hang your hands off that thing very well. Stupidest decision in the history of Tesla. You heard it here first. Discuss.
Well, that's what I heard. Lots and lots of people saying about that center screen with no binnacle display. What the hell? You're going to have to be distracted and look to the side. And here we are almost 1 million cars later. And people haven't made any more peeps about that.
That's not true. People still hate that center screen. Don't pretend that nobody talks about that thing. And I have just now looked up a photo of this new steering wheel. I will bet money, lots of money, that we never see that steering wheel on an SRX. That is not going to happen.
They're in production.
Yeah.
They're in
How
production.
many times have we... Oh, well, actually, yeah, they say they're in production. So let's see if it really comes true. Now, apparently there's laws that say it's supposed to be circular or it's supposed to be connected. So it is connected.
You're supposed to get to 10 and 2 on that
it's
thing.
Not really
It also
just a
has,
circle.
it has an airbag.
Yeah.
It has an airbag. And it's got a bunch of control buttons, which is the thing that makes me the most excited. Have you looked at it closely?
No, because I don't care.
There's a lot of twiddly bits, I'll give you that.
Better
but
question.
I can tell you right now, RPM Tesla is like, okay, we need a solution to this, because there's a whole bunch of people that want a round steering
Yeah,
wheel.
Mark's
Better
got round
question.
steering wheels ready to go, I'm sure.
Better question is, in my opinion,
Blow that up.
Yeah, I'm gonna. So I it was on Twitter, but actually the steering wheel. And let me see if I can get it.
So for those people that aren't watching the show, Joel is in
Just
real time
imagine with us,
telestrating.
folks.
He's showing us the.
So I'm gonna blow this. I'm using my wife's computer. So let's see if I can get this to work. All right. So essentially, on the steering wheel, are touch sensitive controls like capacitive touch controls. One of which is, and as I'm zooming in,
yes.
some of which are the directions, the directional blinkers,
Right.
essentially. So, and then other controls as well. So, especially since they're coming out so soon, I don't feel like they would leave a conceptual design here for this, but I've never seen one. How many times has Tesla shown these odd
Well, they
steering
showed
wheels.
it for the Roadster, definitely. And I know the early Model X had a bunch of design features that didn't fly, like no mirrors on the sides. But this is pretty darn cool. It does have a circular top. I understand it's not the same design or the same,
Right.
roundness. It's actually rectangular, but there are 6 buttons on it. I'm looking at a big blown up version that I made. So you have your turn signals, you have your headlights, you have your horn, you have a windshield washer area, and also the microphone activation, plus the multi-use wheels with the little side buttons. So you can probably, like a Formula One driver, control everything with this steering wheel. And it also makes the new air conditioning a little more effective because it can blow cool air into your face without being obstructed or diverted by the upper part of the steering wheel.
Yeah, that's been a huge problem for me over the course of my life driving. Like the steering wheel is just so in the way of the air conditioning vent.
I will say that it makes looking at the binnacle display a lot better, and I might be eating my words, but
It looks. I mean, you really can see it. The binnacle, that is. It looks great from this view. If it comes through, that'd be amazing.
If the
Tell me.
binnacle display, wait, hold on.
Okay.
If the binnacle display is so pointless in the 3 and the Y, why is it so useful in the S and the X? I'm just curious. What is it about people with $100,000+ to spend on their car that they just need that binnacle display because they like to use the word binnacle display?
Absolutely.
Well, after a certain price, it's what you want, not what you need.
exactly.
Fair enough, Joel.
But I do,
Fair
right?
enough.
I really do think that steering wheel is a problem just for like driving. That means that in order for this to be useful, if it's like a racing car, just a little bit of turning of the wheel means the car is going to turn pretty hard. Otherwise, you can't really spin the wheel. And this is not for race car drivers. This is the X in particular for like soccer mums and dads. So I think there's going to be a reject there.
Okay. But, okay, first off, you say the words, this is not a race car, after in the Q4 earnings call, he said, fastest car ever made in the history of the planet. So 0 to 60, 2 seconds. Yeah, it's a freaking race car. But the other question is, and we know that this is probably his thinking, like it's the beginning of well, you don't need a steering wheel anyways. What the hell do you care what shape it is? They could make it the shape of a pen or something else if you don't need it.
Yeah, it could be a joystick.
No, you know what? I'm not going there, Robert.
Well, yeah. So a pen's one thing, but a joystick that's completely.
But a joystick, like
off the mark.
When I said the word pen, where did your mind go? When Robert said the word joystick, where did your mind go?
Well,
I felt
when you
Thank you.
when you had a media pic of Pen 15, that's part of what I was thinking.
that was a solid media pick, by the way.
And so what I was looking at and thinking when I saw this at first was I was thinking of Tom. And Tom, who was lecturing me about the right place to hold my hands on the steering wheel because of the airbag and all. And this was after Tom or your daughter took a driving class some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's
you
right.
go ahead. Tell us, Tom, where should
safety
you put
class.
your hands?
Well, so, Mel, that's a good point, and I'm glad you brought it up. So, Mel, when your wife drives with her hands on the top of her steering wheel, if she got into an accident in that position and the airbag went off, blam, she'd slam her hands into her face. That's not the proper place for your hands. It's on the side of the steering wheel so the airbag can fully expand and not drive your hands into your face and destroy what is a wonderful face that a person, is born with.
We had her hands surgically removed, so that wouldn't be a problem. So we're ahead of you.
Oh, that's weird. Well, then doesn't matter where she holds the damn steering wheel because she can't hold the damn steering wheel anyway. So I don't really understand how this show started the way that it did. But let me.
You like the way I really focus on the big picture?
Let me ask you a real question about the Q4 earnings call. In your guys' opinion, one word answer from each of you. One word, and I'm going to give you the options. Overwhelming or underwhelming? Melvis.
Whelming.
Damn you. Joel. Muted. Very helpful. Robert.
I'd say underwhelming, like when we went and saw the Model Y reveal. And I think it's for the exact same reason, is because Tesla has arrived. They're an established automaker. They're a big company. There's lots of facets to the company that make it very different than others. But in a very large way, they're no longer this little upstart in Palo Alto putting out these niche bespoke cars. This is like a big motor company. And I think the steering wheel represents the alternative of Tesla wanting to be the bespoke niche car maker by throwing this steering wheel on there. And I bet you $15 that Tesla's going to have an attachment that goes over the top of the steering wheel.
That's like 1,000 words. I asked you one word. Shut up. Seriously. Joel didn't even get to answer. Joel?
Well, Joel's all muted. Oh,
yeah. I'd say I'll go underwhelmed.
Okay, and then back to Robert's point. Yes, we understand an $819 billion company is not a scrappy little startup in the Silicon Valley, Robert. Thank you, Captain Obvious, for pointing.
They kind of are
they're
still,
not.
though.
I'm sorry. They're just not. They're the market leader in EV sales. Small market, but still. Like,
Yes.
but they want to be. They want to be.
It's an $800 billion company, so
They want to have a car that
let's
goes
settle
faster
down,
than
people.
a Bugatti that's $2.3 million.
Okay, I will agree. I believe it was underwhelming. Whelming, by the way, Melvis, is a answer. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Oh, Tom is on fire.
I think it's the best answer.
Whelming?
That's what I would go with. It's about like the why. You know, they didn't have the great financials in terms of, although they did explain some of that stuff away. But after that, I mean, it wasn't Elon yelling at somebody and screaming at somebody or whatever. But I'm not sure if these things are like so awesome that we're like knocked off.
Well,
our
again,
seats anyway.
I guess my question isn't necessarily as it pertains to the Tesla report. I agree that was, sort of what you would expect. But like the questions and the answer to the questions, like in general, it feels like a lot of rehashing. I would say we're going to get into it, obviously, but just in general, it was like the most interesting aspect of it for me was the question at 30 minutes and 30 seconds into it, which had to do with battery, the Cato battery team. But how do you guys want to go about this? How would you like to start this conversation? Who wants to give us the overview? Melvis would like to give us the overview, please.
I'm not going to give you the overview. I'm going to give you my second very insightful note.
Ooh.
Because nobody else is talking about this. I'm the only person talking about this. Nobody talks about it, just me. I'm the only
Please
one.
stop. Please stop. He's
so-
gone. You just need to stop.
Giving me anxiety, Mel.
You're right. I got to stop. So first of all, the steering wheel is the problem. And then the reason it's whelming is because I really do like that new interior. I think that's pretty cool. But nobody noticed this, except me, that the X has 10 miles less range than the prior X. So the prior X had a range of 371, 372, and now this X has a range of 360 for the standard version. They've got this whole write-up about how they've got the new battery tech and they've got all this new structure and all this stuff, and the range in the X has gone down by 10 miles. The range in the standard S has gone up by 4 miles. What's up with that? I was hoping for an X with a range over 400 miles. That's why I'm a little bit whelmed. Don't like the steering wheel, although I might come to love it. I admit that. And the range in the X went down. What's up with that?
Good pickup, Mel.
It is a lot faster. That might have something to do with it.
Could be, but it's all about the range, baby.
And is that the Plaid or
No,
is that
that's the standard?
the standard?
And the Plaid has 340, so that goes down even further.
Was it clear to you, gentlemen, whether or not they were going to, at one point, only be selling the Plaid version? That felt like kind of, because he said you can buy it now and don't worry about it because the Plaid version is going to be $10K more. It felt a little bit like maybe that would be the only variant, but
All they really did is change the name from the
Performance.
performance became Plaid, and now Plaid is Plaid Plus. So it was just a little bit of naming nomenclature.
Okay.
Yeah, the Plaid Plus also is not available till the end of the year. And it's a little more vague what the difference is for that extra money. They say instead of the top, the 0 to 60 on the Plaid is less than 1.99 seconds. Like, how is that not 2 seconds? I don't know. And then the Plaid Plus is less than 1.99 seconds, which is like crazy to consider, but I wonder. And go ahead.
The Plaid Plus, the big difference just on the spec sheet so far is the 130 miles plus more range. But I suspect that it'll also be significantly faster than what they're saying on the website, because basically the acceleration is the same, but it's a huge amount of range increase.
How big is that battery? Just out of curiosity.
It's so big.
It's 520 plus miles big.
Right, but they didn't say
know.
like how many kWhs.
I remember last month that they talked about under 120 kilowatt hours, but I don't remember where I saw that now. But at least that was a speculation.
And the interesting thing I found about is that it's not the new batteries. It's not the new 4680s or whatever they're called. It's just a new iteration of the 18650s.
Yeah, that's what Elon was saying. And people were like sounding confused on the internet as all of this was going back and forth. He said they're not changing any of the battery shapes for any of the vehicles, even though Cato Road is ramping up the 4680s, because they're so battery constrained. They have to stay with the same architecture of all those batteries and keep all those battery lines running at full speed to keep them just able to be behind on delivering.
So where are those 18650s that they are creating? Not 18650, what are they?
4680s?
The beer cans. With the beer cans from now on, the beer cans. What are they putting those beer cans into? Because if we are to believe it, he's sending out videos showing that they're making lots and lots of beer cans. What are they going to put them in? Or are they just making enough to put in like trial Tesla trucks, trial cyber things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll try to take that. That's what I kind of thought they were going to put them in the Plaids.
Right, that's what I thought. Just because of the extra oomph.
Yeah, but it sounds also like maybe they don't fully have production as speedily as the videos, as the videos show, or maybe
it was shown in 4X.
Are,
Oh, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, or maybe they're just kind of stockpiling them, getting them ready for Germany when Germany needs. I think because Germany will be up first, or Berlin will be up first, and then they'll have a stockpile of 4680 form factors ready to go before they actually are able to build them in Germany. So it's hard to know, but I know they have a plan, and it's actually smart because they still need to be able to utilize all the cells that they have, and that's what Robert sort of.
Yeah, and I think that they're probably going to they're making some of them to go into the Semi. Remember, the Semi needs the highest end quality batteries. And at one point, I can't remember who it was that had said that they are looking forward to putting more Semis out. Not full production from Texas, obviously, because Jerome. And so I think they're probably going to pump out another, 2 or a dozen Semis with the new form factor cells, because I think that's the vehicle that's going to get them first.
Right, but at 59:22, and I did some time coding, at about 59:22 of the talk,
for all
somebody
you listening,
asked a question about electric vans, and Elon's comment was, we will make a van at some point, but we don't have enough cells to make semis. The Semi uses 5 times the amount of cells that a car does, but does not sell for 5 times the cost of a car. And so to me, that was a really kind of telling moment in a lot of ways about Semi in general and their mindset. And my guess is anybody who had put a deposit on a Semi is like, excuse me, what? What are you talking about at this point? Like, it really felt like he was kind of down in general on the semi. So maybe at least from not down on the semi, but like down on their ability to make the semi at profitability.
Yeah,
I guess,
using the same cells that they're putting in their cars, right? So this is another reason why the 4680 cell, which is like, I don't know, an order of magnitude less expensive to make, is so critical for the semi success.
Yeah, and I think that's probably likely, they could be making those batteries, like you said, Mel, to go into eventual semi-production. But the question, I guess, is those batteries can't really sit around for a long time. Like, they can't just build batteries and have them sit on the sidelines, because they need to be used, charged and discharged, or they'll start to degrade at some point. And that point is probably like 6 months into it. But
yeah. So one is that if you think about like at least the current version of the Model S, 100 kilowatt hours, and they're selling it for about 75,000. The semi is starting at around 150 or so, and he's sort of, I think, sandbagging it a little bit, but because there'll be multiple ranges, but still, you can get a lot more revenue from cells by purchasing, Model 3 or a Model S, or selling those right now. And I think that's all he meant by that. Sometimes he comes off a little bit too honest in some ways in his talk. Because Jerome sounded not only very excited about it, but like they were going to be building them very soon. Even though Elon said everything he said, it still sounded like they were going to be building
the semi?
Soon. The semi.
So
maybe in small amounts too. Sorry, go ahead, Mel.
There's no way that they are going to just leave batteries sitting around. Like he said it 1,000 times. We are battery constrained, everything battery constrained, battery constrained. I don't think that they're going to make 1 trillion of the beer cans and just sit them on pallets for months. Just don't see it happening. So will they put them into, like you're saying, if they're going to have a few more prototype semis, that's fine. But that video and their suggestion is that they're actually producing a significant volume of those. So what are they going to put them in? Will they stick them in the plaid? And they just haven't told us that part. I wish somebody with some more insight could have asked specifically the question. How many batteries are coming off right now? How many are going to come off in the next month? Where are you putting them?
Yeah. So what they did say at again, around 30 minutes into the call was the Cato team has installed about 10 gigawatts of capacity right now. So they're at 10 gigawatts. I don't know. That's 10 gigawatts over the course of a year. You guys, somebody can do the math, probably Joel, real quick to see like how many vehicles that would actually, add up to. It's not many. My guess is it's even less semis, and maybe it is just enough to do the testing that they're doing on the Cybertruck design or on the Ys. Like it's kind of hard to know. I mean, another interesting aspect of that. Nice calculator, by the way.
Yeah, it's too many zeros for this calculator. I'm sorry.
One of the other things they said was their goal for Cato would be 100 gigawatt hours by 2022. But to get to 100, they're installing 200 gigawatt hours of capacity at Cato. That came at that information came at a different time, but they were like, we're going to install 200 of total capacity with the hopes of getting to 100 gigawatt hours. So that's kind of, the max ceiling at 100% production of Cato is 200 gigawatt hours. Go, Joel. You did the math.
Actually, I didn't yet. Well, then, but maybe Robert did. But the one thing we should realize, though, is that was installed capacity. That wasn't actual.
Yeah, for sure. Yet. No, I get that. I mean, but it's still like.
So for even the 10. Okay, so you want to even know.
Just like if they installed 10 gigawatts and they were able to, let's say they're at 50% capacity. I don't know. Like, what is it? Like, we're obviously speculating because we're trying to answer Mel's question about what are they doing with those batteries? Like, how many batteries is 5 gigawatts? How many batteries is 10 gigawatts?
Yeah, so I just did a quick calculation. 100 gigawatt hours. If you look at Model 3, which is like 75 kilowatts is 1,300,000 cars. It's a lot.
That math seems off. Is
You
anybody
might
else?
be off by an order of magnitude.
I think
so?
that math is
It
off.
seems like too
I mean,
much.
a giga is the next step up
1,000
from
kilos. 1,000 kilos is a giga, correct?
No.
So it was about 35 this year, 35 to 40 this year, and it was just about 500,000. So, I mean, we can look at what they produced.
So a gigawatt.
Yeah, I think you're off by 10. I think it's 100 and something thousand cars.
Yeah. So
I asked Joel to do the math.
other point.
I don't know if you guys are just wondering, looking back.
Sorry,
I was told there would be no.
The other thing that I wanted to mention too was there's been job openings in the Gigafactory 1, and the talk is, at least initially, is that the semis are going to have the either the 21, not the 4680s, so probably not the 8650s, but the 2170s, at least initially. So yeah, Mel, maybe they're not holding them. I'm just not, either they're not really producing a lot, or there's something else they're not telling us. And what's interesting is I sort of wrote down things here, and when people listen, yes, you can listen to Elon, and Elon has these stretch goals that he likes to sort of rally the troops around. But when Drew says it, or when Jerome says it, or when Zach says it, I definitely write a note there, because I think that they're usually underselling the situation. And there was a couple times when, and I think I put in some notes here that I shared with you guys. There's a couple times that you could almost hear them like saying, yeah, 3 or 4 years, and right, Drew, and he was like, yeah, 3 or 4 years, and so it sounds like they have a lot more planned and they think they're ready to do. For example, again, like Plaid or the new Model S, and at least one of the Plaids, I guess, is out now, and so they're going to get some people to spend the money now instead of the end of the year is what they said they were going to do. So there's a lot more sandbagging that's going on. Their installed capacity right now that they showed in the slide, I think, was 1,050,000 cars. But do we hear what their plan is for selling for next year? I'm betting it's going to be under 1 million. It'll be probably 800,000 or so.
I don't know if they said it. Ben Sullins, I just watched his analysis, and he's betting that there will be just under 1 million next year, and then 1.7 the year after. I don't know where he gets his data from, but he is a data analysis, so it's probably something like that. But that's actually a really good point that you brought up. The Plaid one is coming. It's in production right now. This supercar that can go under 2 seconds, I can go and put an order in right now, and I get it in February.
Well,
That's crazy.
yeah. I mean, to go back to answer that question, when at around 57 minutes into the call, they ask about human workers limiting the growth. And Elon says that he believes that 50% growth rate is possible for years to come, and maybe a little more in 2021. So that in and of itself kind of gives you an idea of where that's not like guidance, as you would say, like official guidance, but it is that would be around a 750,000 unit number. Now, whether or not that is factoring in 50% growth at the existing factories and the capacity of the two new factories, it's hard to know like what kind of numbers he's putting on that. I did think that one of the interesting comments where they talked about CapEx and when they were talking about that part was that somebody asked them a question about their access to capital, right? The fact that they have more actual capital allows them to build a factory like Austin and a factory like Germany at full capacity from the jump, as opposed to a slow ramp up of capacity. So you build the building and then maybe you put one line in it, but they can basically build the building and put the maximum number of lines in it because they have the money to buy the machines and all that other stuff. So their ramp up of new factories is much quicker, which is a very like a hidden tidbit, in my opinion, of information that he sort of said really fast. But I was like, oh, that's actually a quite like interesting like piece of information because it really does make the effective use of capital that much better in a lot of ways.
They were talking about that 50% increase in terms of people. I think one of the investors was like, do you have enough people? And they're like, well, we think we're going to get 50% more people. I don't know if that relates directly to production. But
you need people to produce, right? I mean, like you definitely need people to produce.
No, he definitely. I mean, he talked about the 50% a couple times, and Zach said something too that was related. But Elon's been saying for a while this 50% growth, and and they think they're gonna. I mean, their current capacity, excluding Berlin and Texas, is 1 million cars, or their installed annual capacity.
That includes China and Fremont, correct?
That's China and Fremont.
We don't know whether that capacity includes the capacity to build cells to meet the vehicle capacity, right? Like, so they sort of have two capacity situations, right? They have this vehicle capacity and then they have cell capacity. And even towards the end, Elon was very, very clear, like, look, we're doing a great job on these cells. It has no bearing at all on other cell manufacturers. Like, we told everybody, we'll buy as many as you have. So they're using their cell capacity to supplement their ability to buy cells from LG and Panasonic and whoever else. Like, if the four of us opened a cell factory, my guess is Tesla would buy our batteries. I'm just throwing that out there, guys.
My guess is the business would last 5 minutes and then there'd be 3 people dead within the week.
Well, there is that. There is that.
Yeah. So to me, that was the biggest story. And it's been the same story for a while. They are constrained by batteries, almost to the point where you can feel the anxiety. Like, we'll buy every cell, increase your capacity, LG and everybody else. We need every cell because they have no problem selling these cars. And he says it over and over again, we just need more batteries. And then you talk about Tesla Energy, which exploded. It's like twice at what it was the quarter before. It's like, give me your cell. I'm worried that Elon's going to come over to my house here and start taking batteries out of my electronics.
Well, I'm glad you actually mentioned the solar, because the first question when they started taking questions at around 27 minutes was, what is holding Tesla back from leading market share in solar? And the answer to me was also very, very interesting. He says, we want to be, and then Zach came on and basically said they need to get costs down on the production of cells so they can be the cheapest on price in the market. So the goal, it's such an interesting, for me, like an interesting mindset switch, because Tesla does not make the cheapest EVs, right? They make the best EVs, right? They're not the price leader in that marketplace, but because energy is such a different situation, it's not sexy, right? No one cares like about driving their solar panels around or whatever. Like, they just need to make them cheap and sell them cheap, and if they can do those two things, they will lead in the marketplace. So like the solar marketplace is the race to the bottom, right? Like for the most part, it's the race to the bottom. It's so vastly different than their other business. And I just found that to be quite interesting.
It seems like they were also banking on the fact that if they can integrate their solar systems, be they panels or solar roof with Powerwall, that would be their sort of niche that would keep because I don't think you can put a Powerwall on another solar system. I think, Mel, you've had some issues with that. I've talked to 2 or 3 people who wanted Powerwalls, who have other solar systems, and they couldn't get anybody to do it.
No, that is not true. So we have Powerwalls on 2 different installations with non-Tesla
and how smooth was that?
One is working fantastically, and then half of the other one is working fantastically because it's 2 and 2. And it's not. It's very complicated, but so you can do it, and I don't think it's a big issue. And they sell a lot of Powerwalls to third-party installers that don't use their solar panels. So I don't think that's true. I'm calling you out. That's a lie.
Okay. Yeah. I want to go back to some other stuff. Like, so at the very beginning, the first like 20 minutes or so was basically Elon giving
What was the time
I don't
code?
have a time code. It's the first 20 minutes.
And seconds, please, so everybody's following along.
First 20 minutes or so. They talked a little bit about, it was right after they talked about the FSD with 1,000 people in the public beta. And then he mentions reliability in excess of human beings by end of year. How many end of years has Elon said this exact same freaking thing? Don't hold your forehead, Joel, like I'm a hater or something like that. Like, I'm not.
You are.
I'm just because I'm asking the question, like, how many times has he finally
Because you're talking,
That's
you're a
true.
hater. Yes,
That's true.
that's
How
true.
many times has he said this to us over the course of the years?
Now I'm shaking I'm putting my thing on my head my hand on my head is because we it's hard to believe it fully. I have to see it now at this point. I think for software things, whatever his number is, like I said before, I think you got to add. You kind of have to double it and maybe add a couple extra units there, whatever it is. If he's saying months, double it and add an extra month. If you're saying a year, double it and add an extra year.
So that would mean we're still 3 years away from.
I don't know. Like he's at the end of the year, so that's the end of in 2 years or something. It's what I think. What's starting to emerge, for the most part, I think, is that the Tesla is doing a really good job now of estimating when their new hardware products are coming out. I think they're doing a really good job with that. But what they're not doing a good job with is on the software side. There's only one piece of software that anybody really cares about.
Spotify.
But it even happens for
Spotify integration. Is that what we're talking about?
But it's actually almost anything, because I think in some ways it's much more well, obviously it is tangible for hardware, but they can see all the steps in front of them in order to get whatever it is. Build a new factory, create 4680s. They feel like they're all on path to do everything that they're promising. But it's only Elon talking there, and for FSD, and it looks amazing. We talked to Kim Paquette. She sounds the things sound great and look awesome, but I still feel like it's still much longer away. But it could also be right there, and you just don't know.
But he keeps.
That's why I shake my head.
Yeah, and in the call they talked about this a little bit. They keep changing the parameters, right? It used to be a single camera and a still photo, right? That they were having to identify things in, and now it's 8 cameras and all video. So now they're having to retrain the entire neural net to read video and be able to label video in real time. So it's like.
People have to grow, Tom.
Settle down, dude. Like, I understand that.
They have to change.
But when they were only doing single photo labeling, they thought they could get to full self-driving and drive across the country. And they never did. Just going to throw that out there. And they never did.
I don't think he ever thought he could with the original.
That
AP.
was the technology that they were using. That was they knew they were going to get somewhere.
Goalposts
I'm just
are
saying
moving.
incrementally. Sure, the goalposts are
That's
moving.
the problem.
Sure,
they think that it's hubris. If I think that it can happen, I mean, what I heard on the call was that eventually we're going to need to have all new cameras in the car.
No,
he did say.
He
Well,
said
he said.
high
Well, it's
def.
weird. He
did not.
He
He
said
did not.
basically that
Come on.
software 1.0 could run full self-driving, although it hasn't. And that they didn't need software or hardware. I'm sorry, hardware 1.0 could run it.
Two.
Because somebody
Hardware
asked
2.
about chip 2.0. But is it chip 1 in hardware 2? Is that what we're talking about? Is that what the deal is?
Okay, so I was waiting for you to get all upset about
I'm
that.
not
Do you get
upset
more
about it.
upset now?
I'm just talking.
Oh, you sure look like you're upset.
I'm animated because I'm trying to make the show interesting, but whatever, that's cool.
Yes, right. Yeah, you're doing all the work for us. That's what. Yeah. Anyway, so what? They never said AP1 was going to work. What he said was he thought AP2 would work, but he always said he thought AP2 would work, and that was the NVIDIA system that was built in. But he always hedged it and said, but if it doesn't, we'll promise to replace with hardware that does. And that was the new. So now this is the first version of the Tesla chips. Okay. And so what he said today, so the question was the second version that he said that they were going to be working on last year. What's the status of that? So before he actually answered what the status of it was, he said, one, the hardware will completely work. We haven't fully utilized the hardware that we have. That includes the chips, the cameras, everything would perfectly work. And then he said, well, but Elon keeps moving on. And he said, the new chipset will be 3.5 times or 3 times faster, will be more power efficient, will use higher quality cameras. They're still moving on. So, but they still believe that they can do it with this system.
Yeah. So what I read from that, so I want to back up Tom there. You're right. The goalpost keeps changing. At the end of the year, for the last 2 or 3 years, the robo thing is going to be all happening because we're going to have full self-driving. So they've pushed it another year. End of this year, I'll believe it when I see it. Although it is definitely getting better. If you look at the beta testers, it's definitely getting better. The chipset that they currently have, he said, with the current cameras, even with the video instead of the still frames, it's got plenty of room to do that. But he did say that the next thing is higher resolution cameras. And I'm sure that this new chipset, which will be 3 times faster, it'll be a waste to use that right now because the software can't keep up. But they should keep doing it because he said in the call, we want to be twice as good as a human, and then we want to be 100 times better than a human. And you're not going to get there with this chipset and these cameras. So I do want them to get better and better all the time. But I just would like them to get to phase 1, which is reasonably good as a human, self-driving, and he keeps pushing that out.
That's a perfect comment, right? Like, get it to work and make it better.
It was a perfect phone call and a perfect comment.
Stop it. I am going to mute you. I don't want to hear
There's a backstory to why Elon even answered the question. And it was yesterday or the day before, NVIDIA with Neo came out with a self-driving set of chips that were extremely performant, and they called out essentially what Tesla had done, saying that they're much faster and they did all these extra things. So he always wants to be number one, and it doesn't matter. And if somebody's saying he's not, then he's gonna talk about what he's doing next, or he's gonna come out with a newer car. He's always holding something back.
It's just
so
like with,
I don't think we need to get too nervous yet because he's talking about hardware 4. I think that's the only reason he's talking about hardware 4.
Right. This is like when Lucid came out and said we have a car that does 310 miles. I said he'll come out with the plaid version that has 520 because he cannot stand to not be as good. So yeah, when I saw NVIDIA come out with their stuff, I'm like, Elon's going to have to burst that.
If you remember hearing, one thing Elon says a lot is the world likes firsts and superlatives. And I've watched almost all the videos or places where he's spoken, and he says that a lot. But I think he also means for himself that he likes firsts and superlatives, and he wants his products to be the first to do something and to be the superlatives. SpaceX this week actually, 143 satellites is a record. That's a superlative. He wants to be or at least the best right at that point. He wants to make this car the fastest, the Model S. That's it too. And there's actually an interesting side story about Trump, but we won't talk about that because he actually had a poem that he spoke about, and it kind of seemed like he might have been
Donald
talking
Trump
about
had
himself.
a poem? Did it start with "There once was a man from Nantucket," or
no? It was about a snake.
Here I sit. Was it one of those two things?
Okay. It was a snake. Maybe we can play it at the end.
Joel. That'd be awesome. So
yeah, maybe that will be my media
pick. I was thinking that.
Yes, I want everybody to hear that.
But what I will say about that is if he wanted to be first and he wanted to have the superlatives, then FSD at exactly as good as a human can drive would be pretty awesome. And then the next version of it could have been FSD 2 times better than a human can drive, and then 3 times better than a human can drive. But he went from FSD not existing to, I'm going to make FSD 3 times better than a human. I'm going to make FSD 4 times. Like, at some point, just make it.
Just make it.
Just make it. You've sold it, right? You've sold it. And I bet you there's a lot of people who bought Computer One who were like, yeah, I think I'm going to get FSD on Computer One. And I do want to talk about other things, and I don't want to be the one that's like constantly harping on this thing, but
you do.
Yeah, you do.
but one of us has to be.
No, that's fine.
While we're on the FSD topic, I thought it was interesting, and I don't understand all of the elements to this, but he was asked why Dojo, which is the FSD self-training program, isn't. Tom's doing some serious kung fu there on this show. Why that wasn't required, and then he talked about this whole holy grail of auto labeling. I guess they're still using people to label elements of video that the cars see. So maybe every time I do push that bug report, because the car is doing some goofy stuff, they actually go and have someone label it, probably someone who earns a lot less money than I do. And I think this is interesting that they're working on, it seems to me like, listening to the fine details of what they were saying, full self-driving is a long ways away. And I guess you guys have been saying that a long time, and now I'm just feeling kind of depressed.
I think when you push the bug report button, it's like flushing the toilet on a cruise ship. I think it just goes right out the bottom.
It's like pushing the elevator button fast, more time.
Well, that actually works,
there.
Joel.
Okay. You keep doing it. You keep doing it. So there was one interesting thing that when he did mention Dojo, which for people that may not know is a supercomputer that will do automated labeling and will do some training of the.
It teaches
AI,
computers. It's a computer teacher, right? Is kind of the
the computer that teaches a computer. That system also sounds like it's going to have specialized chips as well, from whatever rumors out there. But secondarily, though, Elon did mention that he will be sort of giving access to other folks. And if you remember too that. There was an earlier tweet this month that they'll have an AI day sometime this year as well, and I think it's just like the first half of the year. So that could be a fairly important business line as well. And I know Tom could get really upset about Tesla doing something new as far as business lines go. But in a lot of ways, what happened with Amazon and their Amazon Web Services is Amazon was trying to build up fast enough for new customers around the globe, then had excess computer capacity, and somebody came up with an idea to sell that extra computer capacity to other folks. And essentially, that's what it sounds like Elon wants to do with Dojo as well. Is you won't be training all the time, and you'll need it for some times. But other times you could sell some of that excess capacity, and then it could be its own business line.
Yeah, I was thinking about that in what else could use visual recognition and sort of navigation? And I thought, space, right? They're wanting to go to Mars and do stuff in space, which is like a whole nother bunch of elements as far as physics go, because you have different gravities and microgravities and all sorts of other interactions. And then I thought about medicine, like guiding some of these robots for internal surgeries where you don't actually have your hands on the patient. I mean, there's just so many ways for this to go. And if this is an element of Tesla's value, then how much is that going to be worth?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too, because he was saying this AI that we have that's training the car and then he does his stuttering thing. And I thought he was going to say probably as good as anybody in the world. But he's like an order of magnitude better than anybody else's. And then he went into we could sell this. And it turns out that I've just got this now on the internet. just got it right now, that the first person they're selling this AI to is Cyberdyne Systems. So that'll be
on that point, like, so you talked about profits and profitability of the company, and there was a question at 4450, yes, 44, right around 4450 of this
Who
call.
asked it?
I don't know who asked it. It was a person, and basically the question was: is your profitability power tied to your battery capacity? And the answer was yes. It's limited to the company's battery capacity. Growth is dependent on cell production. They want more cells from all suppliers. But then he said this, and I want to talk about value of the company for a little while. He said the value of the company is based on cell output equaling vehicle output, and whatever that number is, you can kind of basically double that, and that's the revenue for FSD, and that's the value of Tesla. That's what he said during the meeting. That's the value of Tesla. That didn't say anything about energy, right? Nothing about Powerwall, nothing about Megapacks, nothing about any of that other stuff that we're talking about. It's like the value of the company, as Elon stated, maybe he misspoke, maybe he didn't, I don't know, but is tied directly to cell production, vehicles, and FSD, and I think that has to do with the robo-taxi stuff as we move forward, and I do have some follow-up information on that, but I'll let Mel sort of respond to that initially.
yes, because somebody asks, are you worth your valuation? And then he did that math, and we've said that before 100 times. If you truly can crack autonomy, like truly crack it, then that is just multi-trillion-dollar business. And Tesla Energy and stuff will also be very big. But if you can really make every truck, every car, every delivery vehicle be autonomous, then you absolutely crush multiple industries. And that's just, I don't know, is it a $10 trillion industry or more? So I think he's absolutely correct there. It's bigger than Uber, it's bigger than Lyft, it's bigger than Amazon delivery, it's bigger than FedEx. So that's why he comes up with, like, if you want to know if we're really worth being a $10 trillion company one day, if we do full self-driving, we're done here. We have all the money.
Yeah, so I think that came from the institutional investor questions on say.com, where they asked profit linked to batteries. He said the goal was 3 terawatt hours, but he said that half of it would go to storage. And then when it came to the value of the cars, I think what he was saying is that the cars normally nowadays drive just a handful of hours a day, maybe, but when they're full autonomous, they'll drive 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day. So the value of a vehicle will grow by a factor of whatever, 2, 6, 10. And that is linked to the value of the company as well, which I think, it just says that how important. So it's about batteries. If they can crack autopilot, that blows the doors off of everything. Yeah. And then the other thing was that they were talking about the efficiencies that they gain. So this is why they're going to throw the octavalve and the heat pump into all of the cars eventually, and, the better braking systems. And so all of those are kind of small compared to the batteries, but yeah.
But yeah, and again, I'll go, if that is the case, and FSD is the key, but FSD keeps getting moved, right? It keeps getting moved. They keep moving it. They keep pushing it. It's the key, but they keep.
Do you think it's less important?
No, I'm not
do you
saying
think
it's not less important.
Why do you think he's moving?
I don't know why.
Why do you think he's moving
Because
it?
they haven't done it. Why haven't they done it?
Well, think about it.
Why
You're a
haven't
smart
they
guy.
done it?
Why do you think
haven't
he's
they
moving
done
it?
It's
Because they can't do it. They
hard.
haven't figured it out yet. They're working. It's
But
very hard.
But why does he
like anything
okay.
worth
No,
pursuing
I
is
get
hard?
that, but he hasn't done it on any level. He hasn't done it on any level, and he keeps saying he's going to do it better, better, better.
I
Any
drove
level?
all the
No,
way home
Tom,
from work yesterday in autopilot. That was fucking awesome.
You did? Did you
Yeah.
drive did your car drive you from the hospital onto the freeway, off the freeway, onto the car?
I had to do
off
the turn onto the freeway and the turn off of the
Okay.
freeway. Yes.
Thank you. That's not full self-driving. Do you still have to pay attention to what your car's doing? Where you're sitting in the back seat? Thank you. That's not full self-driving.
Tom, you're conflating full self-driving. It's all done with. It's not improving. It's not better. it's gotten substantially better. It is getting better all the time. Elon was like saying with his alpha versions, he's driving to places he's never been before. What I hear you saying is like, but it's not getting better. It's getting substantially better. It's just not getting better as fast as he thought, because as Joel was saying, they've gotten really good at like working out when they can make more cars, but the software thing is a little harder. But I don't think you should be giving people the impression that it's not progressing. It's progressing pretty quickly. I don't know if it'll be at the end of the year, but it's certainly progressing. What my car can do now is substantially better than it could do.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Like, enhanced autopilot is amazing and getting better and better and better. Full self-driving does not exist. Something that does not exist cannot get better, right? Like, even Elon said that when he has the advanced beta version, he is like, the interventions or whatever are going way down. Interventions are not FSD. I'm sorry, it's not. And I get the semantic argument, and I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass, but FSD is FSD, and improvements on FSD is... FSD has to exist. And apparently, I've won the first Talking Tesla award of 2021. I've won the Curmudgeon award.
Curmudgeon.
Apparently, I think you may have misspelled curmudgeon.
No,
so,
I looked it up. It's right there.
Okay,
on Google.
good.
So
That's
stuff
good.
this in your
Nicely
ass,
done.
man.
But that's fine. But again, like I will say, like, yes, enhanced autopilot in general is amazing. It gets better and better and better every month, every year, every week, whatever, every day, every hour. Full self-driving, the thing that you have paid multiple times for, is not a thing that exists.
7
is not a thing that exists. It's not a thing that exists.
I'm not
right. But okay, so one is that you can't. So you can do whatever you want.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
FSD is autopilot, current, whatever it is right now, all the way up until full, real autonomous level 4 or level 5. He uses that term to describe everything. So you're playing a sort of a name game there in terms of, well, how can that get better when you don't even have it? How can it, I mean, geez, anyway, but what I would say to you is that it is getting better, whatever you want to call it, and then eventually he'll get to there. But the other piece is that I want to say is I did accept the changing or moving goalposts. He's not moving goalposts. He keeps moving the timeline to when he can get through the goalpost. The goalpost has been the same. He's been saying for, I'd say, since 2017, he wants these to be, it probably will have to be 10 times better than a human before regulators will accept it. He's been saying that consistently. Now, what's been different each time is what he thinks is going to be enough to get them through and where they are. That's not moving the goalpost. That's thinking that you're winning and you're losing. But he needs to just continue. He's continuing on, and he's going for what he needs to go for. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, he's got to talk. People want him to talk, and then once he starts talking, he starts making promises. It's just the way.
Again, autopilot is amazing. Enhanced autopilot is incredible. The technology that they're putting in these cars is amazing, and none of it is full self-driving.
Oh, Tom, I just want to reach over and slap you on the
Let me ask you this question. Have you sat in your back seat and driven your car? It's not full self-driving if you haven't done that. Like, it's just
It's not. We all agree, but it's getting better. If you take away autopilot...
No, but did you see the guy who was in the back seat of his car and the car was driving and his mother filmed it? Oh, my God. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, it's cool, and I'll be that guy on this show. That's cool. I'll continue to be that guy on that show, and it doesn't matter. But I want to ask you guys another question about valuation. Hold on one second, Joel. So it seemed like during this last few months where Tesla has just run up to being an $800 billion company, Elon's been like, the valuation's crazy. I don't understand what you guys are doing. It seems like it's reaching this atmospheric thing. And in this call at the beginning, he justified the valuation of Tesla. He justified the number that they're at, and even an even bigger number in this call. And I don't disagree with him. I thought it was just very, very interesting that after so much time of saying that, like, it doesn't it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. In this call, several times, he was like, oh, for sure, Tesla's worth more than you guys think it is.
And you know what that tells me? Is that they're really close to actually cracking self-driving, because I noted that. And I've never heard him say that before. And then he was talking about the self-driving thing. And I think internally they're like, oh, damn, we are getting close, because he has never said for months, like, this is out of control. It's crazy. But I think they see the horizon better than us and like, oh, actually, you know what? $1 trillion valuation. I know they're saying this around, they're drinking coffees like, suckers, we're going to be 10 trillion. They are internally very happy. And I hear the giggling of Jerome and all the other kids in the background there. They're like, oh, you people have no idea. This is going to explode.
You know what, though? Elon did twice say that we're not worth that number. But what he said is, but at some point we will be worth
in
that
this
number.
call, he said they weren't?
So, no. This was, like a year ago, and then like 18 months, 2 years ago, he said that, they're not worth it. But he said, he's also said, we're not worth it, but we're working to be worth more than that. And so the time's coming. Is it a year, 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But this is the first time in like an earnings call. This is where it matters, right? Like when you say things like this on an earnings call, investors, this is the stuff that the SEC looks at, right? Like you say things like that on Twitter, that's one thing. Sure, the SEC is looking at that. But if you say it in an earnings call, that it has weight behind it. And I agree. I do believe that, maybe they do think that, they might be getting closer to FSD. Okay. I mean, I get it. Like, that's what they need to be.
I think the big story in the next few years is going to be just how huge the valuation is. You look at Apple's valuation and it's sort of gotten out of control. But I think Tesla could be the first $5 trillion company in the next few years. If full self-driving by the end of the year really actually happens, if they can fix some of the battery constraints, Tesla will be valued. Here it is. I'm just saying it right now. It's going to be a $5 trillion company within 3 years. Yeah, take it to the bank. Boom.
So, Tom, I'm sorry, I don't hear you guys.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I think Mel got muted. I don't know if he muted himself or you did, Tom.
I muted because I just dropped the mic and nobody cared.
Tom, what do you think of all of the videos and all of the reports by the full self-driving beta testers, of which now there's, 100? I think that's the number I heard. And he's going to start rolling out more broadly.
What do I think about it? I mean, how many of those people, even Elon himself, like, is how many interventions per mile or per 10 miles or whatever it is? Like, again, I agree. FSD is FSD, period, right? FSD, we all know, like, the definition of FSD, or maybe we don't all agree on the definition of FSD. The definition of FSD is level 5, right? Level 5 autonomy. Are we in agreement at least on that? Okay.
No.
Well, then we're talking about different things, and we have
4. I think it can be 4.
Definition issues.
Well, no. What
a robotaxi needs to be 5, though, right?
A robotaxi needs to be technically.
Yeah, if you don't geofence it,
you probably want it to be 5. No, you could have a steering wheel in it, and essentially, there's some places where you can't go. And if you've defined those places, and let's say they're backwoods and like certain kinds of weather, as long as you're not doing that, you could be a 4 and you could still be a robotaxi. So I mean that's kind of fine. But go ahead, Mo. Go ahead.
Well, tell me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding of 4 and 5 is a little bit subtle. 4 is basically it can drive itself by itself, doesn't need human intervention at all. But level 5 takes it to the next level under any circumstances. It's almost like the freaking thing is sentient. Like under any circumstances, it can do it. So that's the way I understand 5 is a little bit semantic, because I know a lot of people who are not level 5 and a whole bunch of people who aren't even level 4.
Let me ask you this question. Your son gets in a Tesla robotaxi. What level does it need to be for you?
It needs to be level 4 and has been demonstrated to be multiple times better than a human.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, like for example, it could be like these Google cars right now are very good, but they're not going to be able to go in the snow. But if you're in California and there's no chance of snow, it's no big deal. Basically, the difference is there's some defined domains where a level 4 can't go, and it knows it and it stays away from those domains, or it stops it alerts and says it can't go in.
Okay,
these
but
domains.
it's still doing
Other
it.
than
But
that,
but it
perfectly
doesn't
fine.
need the human, right? It's still a robot. Okay, so it's a robo taxi that can't drive in the snow. Fine, I'll give you that. We're not close to that.
No, so but let me just finish with one point though, and we can move on. You know, I don't know if it's you're just saying this or whatever, but FSD is a product. Full self-driving or let's just call it level 4 or level 5 is something else. They're not at level 4 or level 5. I completely understand, but when he's talking about FSD, he's just talking about the product that is essentially autopilot at that point.
Okay, so then that's insane to me, right? Because like if you're talking about FSD is about robo taxis, which is tied to valuation.
Well, they're calling it FSD now, though. That's the thing. He's calling it FSD now. It's obviously it's not. Okay, but he is. So I'm saying it's a product.
All right.
And
that's a problem in my opinion.
Can I just like back us out from the sort of absolute has to be 100% every time, everywhere to what matters? If they can get a car to drive all throughout Los Angeles County or New York City without any intervention and be some number 2x, 10x better than any driver, what's the value of that? Forget it. If you live in Kansas, love you, man, but I'm just trying to make a point. In the biggest markets, if they can make this thing work and the reins are off, send out the cars, the value is going to blow up. So it doesn't really matter. It does to the people who live in Big Bear where it snows and they want to have a full self-driving car take them home after the bar. But if it goes out in the cities, if it goes out in the places where there's money to pay for it, forget it. It's over.
It does snow in New York. I just want to.
Yeah, but not that much in the city. And when it does really bad, the taxis aren't running either.
It's going to have to handle snow, but I think once we get to near 5 levels, people are going to start to say, well, geez, does it really have to go off-road? Does it really have to do, some of these things that most people never do?
No, that's fine. I
think that's really,
I'll step back from that aspect of it, right? Like, let's call it advanced level 4. Let's call it 4 plus. Though. I mean, I don't care what you want to call it. It's not doing any of that now, right? It's not even at a high 3 at the moment, is it?
No, it's not. But actually, can I just go back on the snow thing? Snow is not a problem when you have really high-resolution maps, high-resolution GPS. So I can't see the road, but I know where the road is. So we're a little bit stuck on the snow thing here because that screws up the cameras. But that's how you get to level 4, 5 everywhere. Is like the world has been so heavily mapped by GPS, probably put up by SpaceX. It can do it within 6 inches anywhere in the world. We'll be good there too.
What level is it? I want to like really tie into this robo taxi situation. Like, what level is it when I call a robo taxi from where I'm at right now and it comes to me and takes me where I want to go? What level is that?
It could be 4 or 5.
Okay, so 4. We could say like it can do that 4. It may not be able to do that everywhere, but it can do that in 90% of the places under 90% of the conditions in level 4. Is that fair? So how close to what? How
more
close?
Than 90%, though,
right?
but.
How close to where we are right now is that? So he may be calling it FSD. He may be calling it FSD, but what we have right now is not FSD. It's just not. I'm sorry, but it's not.
Okay, great. It's a product called
that's
FSD.
a stupid name for a product then. It seems like, I mean, I like you, dude. I don't understand why. Like, I don't hope everybody out here doesn't think like we're at each other's throat about this. I'm just trying to understand.
No, everybody thinks you hate.
I'm at your throat. You're lucky.
I'm just trying to understand. I mean, I understand why you care about snow because you live where it snows, but like,
yeah, it's snowing today right now.
I just love that you used to go at all of us like this, Tom, and then Joel came along, and now we just sit back and watch. It's like
I'll go at all of you guys.
I
mean,
oh, he used to hate me,
so,
now he hates Robert, but now he doesn't hate Robert. He hates Joel.
Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist.
So another point that I want to make is that he let it slip that in China, buyers are really discerning. I think that's what he said. They're the most discerning buyers. And in China, only 1% to 2% of buyers have paid for FSD in their cars. So they're sort of like Tom. They're very skeptical. They don't believe. It's not worth it for them. And so when they crack FSD, how many cars have they sold in China? And how many of those cars are people going to then drop the bucks for FSD? That is I mean, like, what's the incentive there? It's sort of like what he said to the engineers at SpaceX. Imagine a pallet of $50 million falling from the sky. Do you want that cash?
So that was a fascinating piece of information. 1%, but they didn't follow up and say what it is in the States. I think it's 112% because I've bought it 17 times.
It's not 112%, but I think that number was so low. That number was so low that it really makes it's interesting that that's the first time they've ever given that number out for a country, I believe. And so I thought it was real interesting that they shared that tidbit of information. And I don't know if it, again, it's 1% of people bought a thing called FSD that doesn't work. I'm just going to throw that out there, right? Like that's one thing. And yes, that is a lot of money, potential money on the table. And, obviously robotaxi in a country like China, because there's so many people, like it's a boon, again, if they can get it to work. I just again, it's to me, FSD is a very, very specific thing. And my guess is the engineers at Google, FSD is a very specific thing. And all the engineers and other places trying to make cars drive themselves is a very specific thing. Okay, Joel.
So it'll be interesting to see what happened with China. There was a tweet, though, by Elon just now, which said that most of the people in China were complaining that they were promised a lower price for FSD, and they would only buy it if they got that lower price, like you, Tom. So maybe you, Tom, and you're not even near the microphone. Maybe you should move to China. You'd probably get along with everybody there because you're so against the product.
First off,
called
like
FSD.
a couple of weeks ago, I mea culpa'd on this very show that I was incorrect about my costs and pricing comments about FSD. And I will tell you, all of the times that I railed against it, I was right. And eventually Tesla figured it out, and they are now charging me what they promised they would charge me when I purchased my car.
What?
Now, I was incorrect.
You're buying it?
I said this no.
Yeah, they're not charging you.
No, but they are.
Yet,
but
though.
the cost of it, if I were to buy
They're
it,
offering it to you.
again, I'm not buying something that doesn't exist, so that's cool. We can keep hammering away at this particular situation, but like, it's not a thing.
Jeez.
I want to correct you both right now, and this is really making me excited. It's not FSD. On the website, and I have it in front of me because I have a thing called the internet, it's called Full Self-Driving Capability.
Oh, FSDC.
FSDC.
What are we now going to have a semantics argument about? Like, what does the word capability mean?
You're the one having the argument.
So what you're
about
telling me is that we're paying $5,000 for a car with full self-driving capability at some point.
No, Tom, we're paying $10,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're paying $10,000 for a car with full self-driving capability at some point.
Can we move on and talk about the fact that Elon said that, when somebody had a sort of a complaint question that what happens if I sell my car, I'm not getting credit for the FSD, or I trade it in. And he said, we're going to go to subscription. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because he says, we'll give you credit when you turn your car in, but I actually had a car with full self-driving that was involved in an accident. The car no longer drives. I still own full self-driving on that car that has not been delivered. So he didn't really kind of answer my question.
And he didn't answer the question like, does the full self-driving go with the car or does the full self-driving disappear? Because that to me is the real question. So I buy a Y for $50,000. I add a $10,000 full self-driving package and I can't take that $10,000 full self-driving package with me. But can I sell the car saying it's $60,000 because I bought the FSD and it goes with it? Or does it disappear, in which case you've sold it twice? You sold it to me, I never got to use it. And now when I sell the car for $50,000, I say to the person, I can't sell it for $60,000 because it just kind of disappeared. That's what I wanted to know. I don't mind if and my situation is exactly that right now. I don't mind that I bought a Y for $60,000 because I bought full self-driving. But if when I sell it, the person who's I sell it to Joel and Joel goes, no, dude, it's not worth 60. It's only worth 50 because I don't get the FSD. I have to pay for it.
Sucker.
Does that make sense?
You don't get FSD because it doesn't exist. But anyways, the question was that, yeah, right. It was about but what he did say was we're paying more for cars that have FSD. Like if you own a car and you sell it back to Tesla, we are factoring that into what we're giving you the car for. But I don't understand whether or not that means they're again turning it off and trying to resell it to the used person. And to your point, if you were to sell it to a third party, or to another person not through Tesla, whether or not that FSD stays with the vehicle or not. I mean, but it is, it's interesting. I'm trying to find the question in the note, and I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, it was. Can I keep my FSD with me when I buy another car? And he said, we're not going to do that. It was the second time he was asked. He tried to avoid it the last time. And he said essentially no. But he said, but we will give you extra credit and we will give you, we are also doing subscription. But I think much of the consternation that's in Tesla Nation has been about the one time when some guy bought a car with FSD
and he didn't get the trade-in,
third party, and then it disappeared. And then there's some people that are saying online, but it's hard to know if they're true or not. But at least this one case, I think it was electric, where the guy bought it third party and then it disappeared, and he made a big stink about it, and then Tesla put it back. But Tesla said that it was a mistake in them trying to figure out where if it was really, if he had FSD or didn't have SSD. But essentially they're not taking it away in third party sales.
Well, so I got to say, this is actually a huge effing deal that they need to be very clear about, because it really makes decisions about whether you would buy it initially and buying a car with or without it. I mean, they need to make this very clear, because I would not, frankly, on my Y, have bought FSD if I had have known that that's just going to disappear and I can't sell it to Joel because it's going with the car. I don't mind if it goes with the car because I can get the value of that back. So if they're going to take it away from me because it's not mine and I don't take it to my next car, and Joel can't get it because it doesn't go with the car, don't buy the damn thing. And I will start saying this on this program every time we do this program, whenever we do it. Don't buy it, don't buy it, don't buy it. And that will really affect their bottom line. So I think they really have to say, this is a thing that has value. It's got to have value to the purchaser or to the car. But if you're saying it has no value once it leaves you, then you should not buy this until, as Tom says, it actually exists.
But even if it actually exists, that's still a factor, right? Even if it actually exists,
it's still a factor.
The transfer
actually,
is
true.
a factor, right? Doesn't go that problem. That specific problem does not go away if indeed FSD is a thing that exists.
You're right, Tom. You've simplified it even further. That still, even when it exists, and it doesn't, they better work that out. Otherwise, they are double dipping and they are going to have a consumer backlash and they're going to get some lawsuits. And I would be supportive of that. That's bull. That's $10,000. That is not an insignificant amount of money. Thank you very much.
Right, but in a situation like, so let's say for instance, and I don't know, maybe Tesla's thinking this way: you buy full self-driving yet again for $10,000, right? And then in 5 years from now, that same vehicle and full self-driving, I don't know, let's just say it actually exists at that point, and now they're selling full self-driving for $50,000, and you sell your car back and they give you the $10,000 bonus for yours, but they turn it off and they charge the next guy the going rate. Like maybe that's what where their mindset is, because you've said many, many times, like eventually full self-driving is going to be 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. Like it's just, it's an endless amount of upside for them to be able to sell you a car, to your point that you've made also several times, that they may not even sell you a car full self-driving or not, because it's worth 50 times more than you could ever imagine paying for it to them as a robo-taxi.
Yeah, so I don't mind them giving back my 10,000. Now it's selling for 50. That's fine. It's just about that initial investment that I made. And yeah, what Elon has talked about in the past is that these cars will be worth $300,000. I'm not buying a $300,000 Y. And that's why I say at some point we're in this intertestament period, if you're a Catholic and there's an intertestament period, that at some point they will stop selling cars. If they truly are worth $300,000 as robo-cabs, they're not going to... Full self-driving will be a $200,000 add-on and nobody in their right mind is going to buy it.
So let me ask you this. If you buy a computer and then it's lived its life and you're going to sell it to a college student and he says, oh, wow, you have Photoshop on it. Can you leave that on when I buy it from you? Is that person breaking the license for Photoshop?
Well, Adobe went to the subscription model, so it's monthly and yearly now. They don't do standalone. I don't believe you can buy the standalone piece of software. But in the past, historically, if you went to the store and bought Photoshop.
This is literal Tom today.
I'm giving you. I'm answering your question. If
pick another software that's not.
I'm saying I'm going to answer your question based on Photoshop. Like in the past, when I have purchased Photoshop, and if I sold it on the machine, it would stay on that machine. You could always install your seat on two machines, and you could either leave it, but so if I sold you my computer and it had Photoshop on it, you now own, in my opinion, you would own those two seats. If I wanted to get Photoshop on my new computer, I would have either sold you my computer without Photoshop installed and kept my license that I had purchased, or I would buy a new license that then had two seats. Does that answer your question? Why?
No, not at all.
Why does it not answer your question?
Because it wasn't specifically about Photoshop.
Okay, it's a piece. Okay, I thought you got Software X. No. If I sold you Software X and it had one install and it was on that computer, I bought Software X for $100 and I sold you my computer. Could I add $100 for leaving Software X on it? Maybe I could leave $80.
Well, there's some implied value, right?
But I could also just as easily leave Software X on there and remove my license key from it and make you repurchase a license key to activate that Software X in that computer. I don't really understand where you're coming.
So most software licenses for computers don't allow you to do that. Don't allow you to sell that software. It's just to you. You can't sell it to somebody else. And that's potentially where they think they're going with that. Now, I could see them allowing it in third-party sales. I think that would just...
Well, sure. But how about this? How about this? I buy Photoshop today, but it doesn't work for 3 more years. I'm not doing that either.
All right. So,
eventually,
I think he's talking about FSD.
Eventually, you're going to be able to crop photos using Photoshop. Okay, thanks. I'll buy it when I can crop my photos.
So let me ask you guys this. There were a lot of topics discussed today in the call. What did you think was the most important item that
That's not
they
FSD.
FSD or not, and whether you want to call it FSD or if you want to call it full self-driving capability. Let's go with Robert first.
I'm going to say what I was disappointed in having missed was any announcement about the Tesla compact car. I was hoping for that. I was looking for some juice there, even though I know they don't have the battery capacity, but I really wanted to see something like that because I think too many people continue to see Tesla, and even more so now, as this bougie company that has nothing to do with the common folks, especially now that we have all these Tesla billionaires or millionaires.
FSD was the thing for me. That was the big one. But now I have to tell you that this is the sad part of the show where I've got to go now because I'm so elderly and I've got some things to do. But I do want to give you my media pick before I go, and I've handed the hosting duties over to Joel.
Whoa.
So Joel, you're now in charge of the Zoom. But
Okay.
do you want to know what my media pick is?
Just don't say
I do.
Ozarks.
Ozarks.
I
I
desperately do want to know what your media pick.
I still haven't finished Ozarks. I'm so close.
Your media
I
picks
just
is not
want
Ozark.
Tesla Nation.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
It's Ozark again. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'm just
All right,
saying.
have a good night.
Look, this has been great, and I'll catch you guys soon.
No.
Has it
Seriously?
been great?
Is that what you're saying?
I just-
Ozark?
This is the first time in years that I cannot wait to listen to Talking Tesla because I know that Joel and Tom are going to go at it some more.
Nice.
I'll listen
Well,
tomorrow. Bye-bye.
all right.
Unbelievable.
So, Tom, what about you? What was the most important piece today?
That's a darn that's
Positive
a
or
darn
negative?
fine question.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, I think for practicality reasons, the stuff where they started as a Tesla owner and like the future of like how it is to own a Tesla, which I think is important, had to do with what is Tesla doing to improve service capacity, and the two answers that sort of came out of that, or the two kind of questions, the immediate like 4 or 5 minutes that followed, and that was, again, approximately 36 minutes and 52 seconds into the talk.
I should have known by you telling us the seconds that you're going to be very exact.
where
Maybe I should have
somebody
known that.
asked, what is Tesla doing to improve service capacity? And the answer, which I thought kind of sucked ass, to be completely honest with you, was by improving the quality of our cars, was basically the first thing that came out of his mouth. So basically, and then he said 40,
Jerome.
yeah, so 40%, and then they started to talk about like blah, 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 this, that, and the other. 40% of the service visits in North America are currently mobile, and their goal is to get that to 50% in 2021. And then they said, oh, we're making improvements. And he says it's basically around 10 days currently on average to get a service appointment for your Tesla. I think that's somewhat problematic. That seems like an awfully long time. If I call and I've got, there's an issue with my brakes, or there's an issue with my seat, or there's an issue with whatever it is, and they're like 10 days before they can even look at it or get me in, that doesn't feel great for somebody who's buying a Mercedes level cost vehicle, right? On any level, right? Like if I called Mercedes, please bring it in, we're going to take a look at it. I'm not trying to compare the two things. I know one's a much more mature company, but I think like if you're asked that question and your answer is we're trying to improve the quality of our cars, that to me is kind of a little cheeky of a response, in my opinion.
And it's a little worse than that, Tom, because they said they have 140 service centers, and it's at 100 of them that they're averaging appointments within 10 days. And their goal is to have that for all 140 centers. So that is
10 days is their goal.
correct for all of the service centers. So some of those service centers are longer, which is not a good thing. But
Probably higher density areas.
Right, like
things
here in
Yeah,
Los
but
Angeles.
regardless, if your goal is 10 days, I don't personally believe that's a great goal to have, right? Like do they need to build out their service center capacity?
Yes.
Maybe. I think regardless of whether or not you're making quality cars, things break on vehicles. And then they went into, after that, they sort of said, like, we're trying to make most of that community. Like, people are like, you can't even call. The guy basically specifically said, you can't even call a service center and get somebody on the phone anymore. And that's pretty true. It's pretty complicated. Their phone tree is difficult at best, in my personal opinion. When you try to call at least the local service center, you can't talk to a person. That's very frustrating to somebody. Maybe it's an older person thing, but that is Tesla's demographic is an older person, so you got to understand that aspect. They're saying that, like, they want to have all the communication be done through the app and not by phone, which works. It's fine. It's not ideal, in my personal opinion. Some of it's about building a relationship with a company, with a brand.
It is ideal from Elon's standpoint. Elon has wanted to automate everything from soup to nuts and not even have people in the loop. So I think it serves Elon's ideal.
Yeah, so that would be my answer, would be the service center question, the service center thing that came up.
And I like that one because I did have a lot of notes on that one. I think I wouldn't have liked the answer by Jerome if it came from Elon, because then I feel like, one is that Jerome did have a service job in his past as with Tesla even, and but I actually think that, like, some of the issues, I think even you talked about, Tom, where you talk to one person, they say one thing, you talk to another person, they say something else. What Jerome sort of said was, well, if it's all in the app and it's all written, there's a written history that everybody can see, and they can make sure that they follow up with what's already been promised or what's been talked about. And I kind of
I agree, but you could also type a note. Like, I mean, that's about training the person to type a proper note during their conversation and stuff like that. And I get where you're coming from, and I agree. I agree with you. Like, in terms of that paper trail. But again, in terms of the touch points, right? The touch points, brand to brand ambassador, brand to brand owner, brand to customer. That's not for a company like Tesla that is billing itself as this high-end, or selling its vehicles as if they're high-end, more expensive vehicles. That doesn't fit, in my opinion, like, with the kind of service that when you think of, and I don't know, I've never owned a Mercedes, but when you think about Mercedes service, or you think about Jaguar service, or you think about these luxury brand services, Lexus even to a certain extent, right? It's about that human connection, saying, like, oh, we're sorry your vehicle's not working, let us take care of it.
Especially since Tesla originated with a high touch point, if you will, service center experience, where you'd walk in and they'd be like, oh, you look like your wipers aren't doing so good. Here, we'll just put some on for you. You know, they were giving shit away, and they were really nice and bending over backwards. And now the absence of that, which is something significant to those of us who've owned Teslas for almost 10 years, is a sticking point.
You know, I mean, I think it should be about 5 days on the timing. But I do think that the mobile piece, which I didn't really think would be a smart way to go, and they must have found some way to make that work. I think that does feel very
I think the mobile thing does for sure, but not if it takes 10 days, right? Or not if you, like, if you opened your app, right? If there was something wrong with your car, whatever it was, and maybe it wasn't an emergency, tire flat or whatever. And I like your note here, would like to get Tom to not borrow tires. Very funny. Hilarious.
All right.
Hilarious.
Glad you like that.
Like, if something's broken in my car and they tell me 10 days, and now I want to talk to somebody. I want to talk to somebody to see, like, hey, can I expedite it? What I'm going to do in that particular case, for me, I'm going to drive to Van Nuys. I'm going to specifically drive directly to the service center, and that's not going to be 10 days for me to get a touch point. And then hopefully they'll be able to like, oh, it's a simple thing. Like if it's a simple thing, do I really need to wait 10 days? I get it. And maybe this is starting to sound a little privilegey. Like as I say it, I feel like a little bit uncomfortable saying it. But they're selling vehicles at a premium to a certain extent, right? And when you sell a vehicle at a premium, people expect a premium level of service on the other side of that. And maybe they need to do like to Robert's point, they've set this bar and now they're lowering it. And that's maybe frustrating for those of us who have been around, and maybe much less of an issue for a new Tesla, owner. I do understand and realize that is probably the case. And in the long term, the app and the mobile service, if they can get it under 5 days, whatever that is probably better in the long run. But they got to get there.
I wonder what the per vehicle service engagement is. Because my experience going from an early S to a later S to a 3 that's pretty new is that I have no interest or need for service. I had the service out once because I think one of my headlights had a problem with was that this car? Actually, that was the last car. I wanted them to install the garage door opener. I know they came out for that, but that wasn't a real service. That was me. Yeah, that was me paying extra to get a feature that should have freaking been on the car that I wanted. But I mean, like, I don't think I have, my charge port still sticks. Is it worth it to engage service? No. So I just kind of pry it open with my fingernails. But it's like, there's not much going wrong with my car. So I wonder if there is even that much, what are we talking about? How significant is this? Maybe it's significant with 8 or 9-year-old cars or whatever, 7-year-old cars. But
regardless of its significance, it's 10 days, right? Regardless of the amount of it, right? If, to your point, if the amount is so low because cars don't need service, then it should be easier for them to build more capacity to satiate the need. And so people don't have to, like, again, the goal is to get it less than 10 days average over all of their service centers, right? That's, to me, the goal should be what Joel said, closer to 5 days. To get your car in?
Yeah. Well, to
get your car in.
This sort of reminds me of the variability of Tesla's build quality, right? So in LA, the LA Owners Club hosted Sandy Munro at a supercharger here in LA. And he was talking there. I wasn't there, but I've heard a lot about it. And so he was talking about the car that he was driving across country, having a lot of problems with gaps and whatever. I don't have the fine details. And then he looked at another.
Wasn't a lot of problems.
But I mean, it's just like, how tight is the manufacturing? If there's more variability in the build quality, then that would probably speak to more need for service in the future. And so then he looked at another car there that had like super tight gaps and everything was perfect. And he said, that car should be the example. That should be what every car looks like. So,
yeah, but what I do think though the difference is that was the if the top of your door is 3 mils and the bottom of your door is 5 mils, then that means that your engine's gonna be knocking because they can't build a car. But what Sandy said is even with the first Model 3 that he had, that the powertrain was spot on, was awesome. And so these are things that they're going to have to fix because some people complain about them. Some people just don't even notice. Like I know a lot of people that would never even notice that. And Sandy went around with a caliper, but then also said, that it could easily just be fixed at the dealership too, or adjusted at the dealership.
But again, we're not even talking about gaps, though. I assume we're not talking about gaps, right?
That's that's what that is. No, we're talking about what you said in service time, and I completely agree.
Yeah, and I think again, I'm the curmudgeon, right? So I'm the old guy, and we've been in Tesla for a long time. And again, we walked in and we've gotten coffees and espressos and waters and getting
free tires,
free tire rentals.
Rentals.
free tire rentals. But again, I feel like we're paying a premium, right? People that are in these, especially now, if you're gonna. So let's say this: like you're a Model S, you buy a Plaid Plus, and you have a headlight out, and you call. A, you don't get to talk to anybody. B, the phone tree is frustrating as hell. And then at the end of it, you have to get a service appointment on your app, and it tells you 10 days.
And you don't get a loaner car that's a Plaid Plus.
And you don't get a loaner car. Well, I mean, they had to. They had to
That's
eventually
how it used
stop
to
doing
be,
the loan.
right?
They had to stop that eventually, though, right? Like they had to grow up, and I understand that aspect of it, but that's still the case, right? That's still the case. You've bought $100,000 vehicle and you're waiting 10 days to get in for them to then tell you it's 10 more days until we can get the part for your vehicle, because that happens, and we all know that happens as well, right? They have their parts constrained as well.
That happened to Mel.
And
Sure.
and in Robert's,
And there's some cases too, right, where they actually text you and say, "Hey, we noticed your car's not working, or there's a problem with your car. We've already ordered the part.
I've never had that happen.
Yeah.
Do you even drive a Tesla?
That does
right
happen,
now, Joel?
Nice.
Man, you are just on today. So nobody's asked me what I
No,
thought my
we were
favorite-
about to get to it, but we were still talking about service.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't going to leave you out.
Go
there,
ahead,
big
man, because I got another thing I want to
Okay,
say.
I'm hanging.
What is about service or about something else?
It came at that same 16 minutes and 22 second point.
Does it fit here? Does it fit here?
Yes,
or do we need,
it is.
Do we
It
allow?
is-
Do we allow?
Yeah,
Joel
It is a
to go?
concern of owners,
Okay,
and that is
please.
allowing other vehicles to use the supercharger network.
Yeah, we should have talked about that before Mel left.
Yeah.
So I don't know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
then that leads into the supercharger report. So should we hold that thought for a second and let Joel
Yeah,
go?
let's let Joel talk about what his highlight of the night was. Please, Joel, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you. I think mine's going to be more positive. Geez, I think we need to be, right? Is the installed capacity of Tesla is over 1 million cars, and that's just only including 2 factories essentially. And we will get some output out of Berlin for sure. So whatever Tesla ultimately says their number is going to be, it's probably going to be around 800,000. There's a strong chance. So there's a strong chance that they'll be at 1 million, and if they get to that point, that will be higher than Volvo. And they're starting to get into some of the medium big boys, the smaller big boys, and I think that's exciting. And if you also look here, Robert, on the screen, I'll describe it for our podcast audience. They list a number of cars, which ones are built in Fremont, which ones are built in Shanghai. In Berlin, it'll be the Model Y for now. In Texas, it'll be the Y and the Cybertruck. And then there's a location to be determined where the Semi, the Roadster, and then the last one there, Robert, is partly what I was hoping that somebody would ask about. Actually, somebody did
We
ask
talked about the
Robert.
van as a future product.
The future product. No, actually, somebody
about the
asked
small car.
at the 57
Such a
minute
smart
and
ass. Such a
32.25
You know what?
seconds.
You know what? Everybody out there that's listening, you're welcome.
No, actually, I do think it's helpful. It is very helpful because I don't think everybody listens to these things. So, and hopefully they're even listening to us.
They're not.
But someone asked about the $25,000 car, and they chose, it was one of 2 questions, and they decided just to answer. I think it was Zach just answered one of the 2 questions, and then said, "Okay, thank you," and that was it. It may have been the last question.
No.
But there's
last
a future
question was
products,
about
but there's also
hydrogen.
Hydrogen. That was awesome.
Oh yeah, God, I know. It's like really like everybody walks up.
Although the question before that was about the Semi and full autonomy, and I actually thought that like the question wasn't quite understood. Like it felt to me like
it wasn't right answered.
it felt to me like the question was, will the Semi be the first Tesla to reach full autonomy? And it felt like Elon answered it as if, will the Tesla Semi be the first semi to reach full autonomy, regardless of company? And that made that answer like very, very confusing. And maybe I misheard that, but that was.
I think it's because
I was watching Tesla Daily do that, and it was Gene Muster who was asked a question, and he's really good, but it wasn't sharp at that point. And so even the Rob Mauer on Tesla Daily wasn't sure what was being answered, but he was sure that Elon would say that the cars would be FSD first and not
my
semi,
takeaway from the answer was that they're all going to be full self-driving when they're all going to be full self-driving. It's like, it doesn't matter what the vehicle is, wherever the cameras are positioned, it doesn't matter, because it's like the computer it's the brain, it's not the vehicle.
Well, I disagree, because he did say that like you have to train the semi differently, because the semi makes different turns, right? The semi. Right, the semi won't parallel park. It needs to obviously have a wider turning radius. I mean, there's a lot of differences. Right. So I think that
But he said it wasn't a training thing; it was a configuration thing. There's a good tweet by Green Daily. Green the Only or Green Only or something like that, where there was a whole bunch of configuration pages for the vehicles, even the weight of the vehicle. And turning radius was in there. There was a number of different things. So that is a configuration, and then the neural network handles those configuration numbers and then does the driving from there at that point. So it's almost like you teach your kid how to drive, and you say, and they know how to drive a small little car, and you say, okay, well, now when you drive this bigger car, you're gonna have to worry about this and this, and you can't go under a drive-through, or you rip off the roof, or this or that, and then they know what to do. And that's essentially what it is, without having to retrain the vehicle, though. That was interesting, because if you remember a while ago, this question was asked to Elon a long time ago, maybe 2016 with AP1, but going into AP2, and he was asked the similar question, and he said, one, we wouldn't be selling it to another company because the car could have a different sort of shape and configuration than our cars, and we'd probably have to retrain the car in order to work with their car, or retrain the neural network to work with their car. So now it sounds like they don't feel like they have to do that, so much so that they were actually talking with some folks about trying to sell the technology to other OEMs, which was, fairly interesting as well. So
I think it's interesting, banging down on autopilot over and over and over again. And it just makes me a little more excited to see the thing fly, and then we can have another discussion.
I mean, you used an interesting word when you just said that. You used the word autopilot. I'm not banging on autopilot.
Right.
No. I know he did that on purpose. That's very good, Robert. We won't go into that again. So, what else, Tom?
I don't know, man. I think like we've hit this thing pretty much ad nauseum. I don't know if there's anything else that you guys want to talk about as it pertains to this thing. We covered a lot of the questions. I think we covered a lot of what went down. The one thing we didn't cover, and we should definitely make a note to cover this, was how much of their bond debt they've actually paid down, which I think that's a pretty significant piece of their capital puzzle. I mean, personally, at the valuation they're at right now, I may have considered selling a little bit more stock and paying all of those bonds down, but there's probably some good reasons to not do that sort of thing. So in terms of the earnings call, again, I'll go back and say, still relatively underwhelming in general. I thought the questions, even though we've talked about them for a couple of hours now, were also a little bit underwhelming. There are a couple of big things in there. Cybertruck we didn't really touch on. They're talking about like the build of the Cybertruck and all that stuff. So I think we should.
Oh yeah, that's
I
getting.
think we should go into. Robert's going to have a comment, and then Robert from that comment will go into Supercharger update, and then we'll hit media picks and say thank you to our listeners and get the hell out of here.
Yeah, so it was when Dan Levy of Credit Suisse asked about it started with regulatory credits, and I thought, regulatory credits are kind of all over the place, and Elon has been kind of down on them, but I think with the new administration, there may be some real significant valuation that floats towards Tesla with regulatory credits. Then he also rolled into the whole about getting money, putting money towards future capacity. And Zach said that they were going to expand the service centers and the supercharger network to get ahead of future demand. And so I thought that was good, although I have to say that today's supercharger report does not belie the kind of getting ahead of capacity. Not entirely. So do you guys want to take a guess? Our last show was on the 1st of the year. This is the longest I think we've gone in a long time, 26 days between shows. How many superchargers do you guys think opened in the last 26 days?
I'll go first. I'd say 15.
Mel?
I think because the number, crikey, I think 72. So that's
Oh, Mel,
Mel's
you're
guess.
such an idiot. You're such an idiot.
I would say, based on the construction number which you give us and the permit number which you also give us, I'm going to say 31.
Yeah, it's 13. So like I said,
Ooh.
it's
Well,
really
31. I'm
underwhelming.
dyslexic. It was.
Most of those.
Oh, you should have used Mel's accent to say
Most
that.
of those are in the United States. 8 in the United States. Norway got 1. France got 1. Taiwan got 2. Canada got 1. So not very many. There was a permit that they pulled in California. What's interesting about that? Because it's not California. It's California, Maryland. Did you know there was a California, Maryland?
wow.
They're getting 16
know
supercharger
that.
plugs. Whoa. So construction, we've got 22 superchargers under construction and 19 entering the permit level. So I think the next supercharger report might be better. I have my fingers crossed. And media picks. Mel? Oh,
Well, hold on before you go on to media picks. In the Q4 and final report, they did have the supercharger connectors for the end of the year. And we did talk about it a little bit, but it was 23,277 that we ended the year with supercharger connectors.
you say plugs.
With plugs, but that's what, officially they say connectors. I don't want to say a plug when it's a connector.
Yeah,
They're
I don't
slightly
know. I
different
mean, like,
things.
according to the supercharged.info, which is my source, there's 21,150, I can't read the last number, open charger plugs.
Well, this is like Tesla's SEC filing at 23,777.
Right.
So I'm going to go with that number.
So, Robert, are you saying that
25,164
Tesla's lying?
Bunch of liars. Bunch of lawyers.
stations?
Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty good. Do you also have the number for
No, because I got to go to the bathroom. I'm just dying. It's been
America?
such a long
Charge
show.
America?
2 hours. No, I don't.
Well, we're summarizing an hour-long
True.
shareholders call.
We're fighting
And
about
about an
full
hour
self-driving
arguing.
for 45 minutes.
Arguing for half of that. Yes, it's
about
true.
the definition of what full self-driving is or isn't. Well, let's keep going. All right, Robert,
Yeah.
do you want to give your media pick?
I do.
Please,
I've been enjoying
sir.
Okay.
both the show and the book. So I started watching The Expanse. I can't tell you how many people have told me that I would like it and that I should watch it. So I started watching. It's on Amazon. It's about the future, maybe 250 years in the future, where people have not only reached out and started living on the moon and on Mars, but also the asteroid belt and the moons beyond, like the moons of Saturn. And so it's actually quite good. So that's The Expanse. The Expanse.
I'm surprised we didn't
And the
have that
book
one on
that it's
already.
based on is called Leviathan Wakes. And it's by James Corey, who really isn't a person. It's a pen name for two guys who write together. And it turns out they've written 8 books already, and the 9th one is coming out in October. And I know
Leviathan what?
Leviathan Wakes.
I'm just trying to write this because the
Tom
one
is
that you
making
wrote
notes.
down was called Sound of Metal.
Yeah, that's because somebody grabbed an old note that it doesn't have all the stuff that I wrote and sent out to you guys. So,
All right, so I'm going to delete that one. And so The Expanse on what? On Amazon?
Amazon.
Okay, good.
And the
Thank you
cool
for that
thing
one.
about the book versus the series is that the stories diverge really significantly. So if you're watching the series, it kind of jumps ahead and then it comes back and it does some variations and there's characters who weren't in the book. And it's very good all on its own. And I was reading the book at the same time. I've now moved on to the second book, which is somebody's war, Clayton's War or something like that. And so I'm going to look forward to continuing on with this because it has kept me entertained on these rainy days. Caliban's War. I'm only about halfway through it.
Are you doing this on Audible? Or are you
No, I'm
actually
getting it
reading
from
book?
the library on Libby, which is probably
Okay.
one of the most actively used apps on my phone. Libby.
Listening or reading?
You
Listening
can read
reading, I
or
think.
listen from Libby, but I get all the audiobooks. And you
You're
can put them
listening,
on.
So you're
Because you drive a lot. So
Yeah, and I also
figured
like
you
when
might.
I'm cooking and when
Nice.
I'm cleaning dishes, I'm just plugging this thing into my ears. And I only wish I had a pair of ear pods I could listen to it while I'm in the shower because that would be even better.
I use a Bluetooth wireless like Jawbone speaker I keep in my bathroom, and I just
Yeah.
Bluetooth my phone to it. It's loud enough to go over the sound of the shower. So
Yeah, I have one of these things that I bought for that, but I don't charge
there
it.
you go.
I don't keep it in there, but I'm going to plug it in tonight. And I'm going to take it in there based on your recommendation.
thanks, man. I guess I'll go. My media pick is a blast from the past. I've been rewatching The Sopranos.
Yes.
Which I've actually
Okay.
found to be very interesting. Although, and I don't know if this again has to do with like where I am in my life, the violence in that show really makes me cringe a lot, and it's interesting to see like how they made shows back then. One thing I find to be more fascinating than anything is how long the introduction, like title sequences. It goes on and on and on forever. But I've been really enjoying it, and it's sort of nice to see the arc quicker, a little more binge watchy, and kind of see how the flow of things goes. And so that's been good. And then my secondary pick is It's a Pandemic. People are baking bread. I've been watching a YouTube channel called Proof Bakery, Proof. It's a bakery somewhere in Arizona. And they do like very long deep dives into watching them make bread, score bread. They did one where the guy literally made like 36 dozen English muffins on this giant table, and it's mellow and it's chill and it's I don't know. I find it personally compelling. I don't know if anybody else will, but I think they do a good job of making YouTube content. So Proof Bakery.
Do you have a sourdough
I have
starter?
2 sourdough starters. One that's a natural rye starter, and one that's a white bread starter. I've had some horrible success making bread. Last weekend I over fermented my bread. I found a local flour miller that's milling like in Pasadena for some California grown flours, whole wheat flours, and I had 1 week of pretty good success. And last week I don't know whatever I did, I over fermented and like no gluten was produced whatsoever. It was terrible. It was very, very sad. So those are my 2 media picks. And Joel, you are up.
I am picking the Umbrella Academy for my first pick. I don't know if anybody's done it before. It's on Netflix, and it's in its second season, but we just started watching it now. The premise is there's 43 women around the world in like 1989 or so, all in the same day, give birth to a child that was sort of spontaneous, sort of almost like almost like immaculate conception sort of thing. They ended up there was a man who was a billionaire who went and tried to sort of adopt as many of these children as possible, and I think he got 6 or 7 of these kids, and they all had superpowers to some extent. The story is a lot reminds me of the Royal Tenenbaums in terms of the feel of the show. It's it was filmed it was filmed in 2019, but you don't see a car older than like 1987 or something. But it's still set in modern day. It's just sort of a weird setup. There's time travel. There's a lot of interesting things. It's a very, very... so anyway, the billionaire wasn't a loving father or adoptive father. He was very cruel. And then, we sort of see these kids... We see flashbacks to when they're young, but they're mostly in their mid-20s now. And they're trying to stop the very end of the world, which is going to happen in the story in 8 days, essentially. Wow. And so that's how each episode essentially is a day. I think there's like 10 episodes in the first season. So they get through 8 days in the first season.
Nice.
Very, very interesting. What's nice about this is that, if you do end up liking it, there's a second season. I haven't seen it yet, although I accidentally just read something about this season ender. But I have one or two left to go to the end of the season, and then it was renewed in November of last year for another season. So it's pretty
So
darn
spoiler
good.
alert: the Earth doesn't disintegrate because they've made it past the 8 days mark, I guess.
Because there's time
travel.
Anyway,
I get you. I was just being
there's time travel, so that's partly why. Yes, you were. The second media pick, and hopefully our fans that may be Trump fans or may not be will find this interesting. There's a just a YouTube. I mean, you can find this on YouTube, and you may already know, but Trump sort of talked about this snake in poems when he was running in 2015 and 16 for president, and he talked. There was a poem about a snake that a woman found almost dead and took care of it, and then the snake bit him, and the snake said at the end, "Why are you upset? You knew I was a snake," or something like that.
It's the scorpion and the frog
and there's some
parable.
Yes, it's kind of fitting, I think, in some ways, and probably why, at least for me, I didn't really feel like doing a show the last mid January. I was a little just I don't know, either depressed. I mean, I have family in DC for sure, but for those folks that find it interesting, that's one to.
So YouTube, if you search like the snake poem, you'll likely be able to find it. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
Yep.
All right. And if
it came up
if you
right
get
away.
a chance, Joel, and you want to add a link to the show notes, we can do that. I don't know that it matters, but
yes, I will.
That's pretty good. Yeah, it's been it was a challenging couple of weeks there at the end of the last administration, beginning of this administration for a lot of reasons. This is not a media pick, but I'm curious. Have you guys ever watched The Circus on Showtime?
No.
The Circus is a political show that basically goes through the campaign, right? It's the circus being the campaigns, the Republican campaign, the Democrat. If you have Showtime, it's an excellent show. They actually did the first 2 shows of the newest season were basically, they were filming while the Capitol thing was happening. So they're like they're filming these guys who have followed politics their entire lives, watching this thing unfold in the Capitol while they were filming. So it's a real kind of real time insider political show on what was unfolding. It's quite. That's one of my. I'm a political junkie in a lot of cases, and I think that the Circus does it better than any other show when they're talking when they're basically embedded in the campaigns of all of these people as they were going. So like they had a person with Buttigieg during and all that stuff, and it's really it's quite phenomenally done. They're very, very smart people who have been like political activists and inside and outside of politics for their entire professional careers.
That'd be interesting to see, because those are folks who have the inside view and they know a lot of the backstory and a lot of the details that we never get close to.
Yeah, and so for me, because I've been watching this show for years, right? Basically, all these campaigns, like even back. They were around, I believe, when Hillary's campaign. I could be wrong about that, but so it's been a long time, and they've been following, all this stuff for so long, and now you see them watch the potential fall of our democracy in some ways, which I personally believe was that we got very, very fortunate that did not go.
Probably 2 minutes from everything I've read.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were very, very close to a very,
dying.
very bad situation for a lot of our lawmakers, people who have dedicated their lives to, serving our country. Whether you agree with the way they do it or not, it is one thing, but, it could have been very bad in my opinion.
On a lighter side of the same start, the Daily Show had a comedian, sort of somebody there at the in DC and at the rally, and it's just kind of crazy how open of a secret it was. But they had and I'll add this as a media pick. I already added my other link, and he was interviewing folks that were rioters, asking, what they thought about sedition as this was starting to happen. And it was just kind of crazy how much of an open secret it was, I guess.
It was,
and so little happened.
It was bad. And there's a bunch of good reporting happening out there about like what was really going on behind the scenes and what we were really on the verge of. So I'm glad that did not happen, because I think it would have almost been irreparable in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
To our, whatever our standing in the world is, right? Whatever our history has been. So anyways, if you are still listening to this show, thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. Thank you if you're a Patreon, thank you for that. Thank you for just being a part of this journey with us for so many years as we embark on this new year and talking about Tesla and seeing where this exciting thing will be going, and is going. Just thank you so much for being a part of that, and thank you, Robert. Thank you, Joel, for being a part of this show, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for holding up all the cards.
Thank you all. We'll see you next time.
And it'll be funnier too.
Yeah, hilarious.